There was a time during the early to mid 2000s where technology felt like it was advancing rapidly and computers were the norm for everyday use, and one of the most dominant operating systems globally were Windows and Mac. And for someone who wasn't a big fan of Apple, I had to admit Mac OS X looked very visually appealing compared to something like Windows XP, and thus this is where Microsoft decided to do something about this. So we'll cover a bit of Microsoft's developing project known as Windows Longhorn and its visual cues from this perspective. So let's start with this. I remember the excitement when I first heard about Windows Longhorn. It was Microsoft's bold vision for the future of its lineup of operating system, promising a radical shift in how we interact with computers. As someone deeply involved in tech, I couldn't wait to see what they've come up with. And one of the most striking aspects of Longhorn was its design language, in which we now call Frutiger Aero. And Frutiger is a typeface known for its clean modern aesthetic, and pairing it with the Aero, also known as Aero Glass, interface created something truly revolutionary. So the goal was to make Windows more visually appealing, intuitive, and immersive. Imagine a desktop that wasn't just flat, but had depth, with translucid windows, smooth animations, visual language that tied everything together. The 3D effects weren't just gimmicks, they were designed to enhance productivity while making the OS feel more dynamic. Features like side-by-side window snapping, improved task switching, and a more fluid user experience that would have been considered ahead of their time. But Longhorn and its concepts that took over 3 years of iterations and reboots never really made it in its final release, canceling its development in 2006, just months before its planned release, all because its source code had leaked at one point. But that wasn't the only reason, and it was just a mess of different things that didn't make much sense, which made it more bloated. Perhaps it was too ambitious, and in its place released Windows Vista, in which its reputation overshadowed it, and during a time where most computers didn't have the specs to handle all that visual resources and was too buggy to even be considered usable. But I believe some parts of Longhorn lived on. Many of its ideas, like Aero Glass, appeared in Windows Vista and then Windows 7, albeit in a more toned down form, while Windows 7 had solved most of Windows Vista's issues, becoming the last Windows operating system with the Frutiger Aero look before everything went flat by Windows 8, and to some extent, some elements made it to Windows 11. Nonetheless, I still miss Longhorn's potential, as it was a glimpse into what Microsoft could have achieved, and it remains one of the most iconic design languages in tech history, a testament to what happens when typography, aesthetics, and functionality comes together in perfect harmony, a future we were promised that never came to be. There was even a time where I made an attempt to recreate some of Windows Longhorn's features and visual cues using Linux Mint as its base during a time where I was relatively a beginner when it comes to modifying parts of the operating system in order to create a somewhat usable concept, despite the facts that I wasn't able to continue maintaining it, as some of the repositories that were used on Ubuntu-based distros weren't exactly well maintained, and so the operating system became relatively out of date in only a few short months due to these modifications. But even then, that's where I got my start in ricing my own Linux desktops, and perhaps recreating Longhorn in more recent times is probably doable now that the hardware needed to run those visuals is possible. But I digress. So, as of late, Microsoft has been focusing more on the use of artificial intelligence and even used AI to vibe code parts of Windows to really care about its own operating system visuals, even to the point that I completely stopped using Windows as my daily driver. So in other words, this was a long overdue video project about a relatively niche topic of a beta, and although I couldn't really try out the different betas in this video, but at least I got to try out the presentation that was pitched to Microsoft, in which it gave us an idea on what they were going for. And special thanks to those that pledged and donated and contributing for making this possible. Till then, this is LR7 talking about Windows Longhorn, visuals, and logging out.